When an archaeological discovery happens, it brings two stories with it. One is the story of what was discovered, and the other is the story of how it was found. Put those two things together and you've got some truly unforgettable stories to tell, just like the ones in this video. So join us as we take a look at 15 of the most incredible ancient artifact discoveries ever made, starting with number 15, the Viking rune comb. When archaeologists uncovered an old comb in the Danish town of Rye in 2018, they weren't expecting it to say much. But once cleaned, runic inscriptions on both sides revealed more than just decoration. One side read comb, the other to comb. It sounds basic, but for researchers, that simplicity speaks volumes. The comb dates back 1,200 years and likely belonged to an everyday Viking. The inscriptions aren't poetic. They're practical, which is what makes them important. Experts believe the writing may have been part of a learning exercise, with someone practicing how to label everyday objects. That tiny detail flips assumptions about literacy in the Viking world. It wasn't reserved for priests or warriors. Even regular households might have had labeled belongings. For something so ordinary, this comb opens a window into how writing began to weave into daily life. It's more than a grooming tool. It's a quiet trace of knowledge taking root in a culture better known for axes than alphabets. Well, just how strange is our past? Number 14. The 3,000 Buddha statues of Handan. Now this find is just amazing. In 2012, archaeologists in Handan, China, unearthed something that stopped them in their tracks. Over 3,000 Buddha statues buried together, many still holding onto their vibrant paint. Dating back nearly 1,500 years, these statues likely came from the Eastern Wei and Northern Qi dynasties, carved during a time when Buddhism flourished across China. But that peace didn't last. Later emperors turned against the religion, ordering widespread destruction of its imagery. These statues weren't lost. They were hidden. Historians believe Buddhist monks or devotees buried them here to shield them from destruction before fleeing the area. Most are carved from limestone or white marble, with some boasting intricate patterns and bright pigments that have defied time underground. The find isn't just a collection of religious icons, it's a quiet act of resistance and preservation. Today the statues are preserved in a museum, silent witnesses to an era of devotion, upheaval and resilience. Number 13. The Sumerian Star Map Tablet. Back in the 19th century, a strange clay disc was pulled from the ruins of Nineveh, Iraq, and placed in the British Museum. For years, no one could quite decode its meaning. Covered in cuneiform, the 5,500-year-old tablet was filled with odd notations until researchers proposed a groundbreaking theory in 2019. The inscriptions may not be mathematical equations as once assumed, but instead a record of a massive asteroid impact dated precisely to June 29, 3123 BCE. The disk appears to map stars, weather conditions, and sky phenomena observed by a Sumerian astronomer, including one ominous line, a white stone bowl approaching from the sky. Scientists later confirmed that a major asteroid struck Austria around the same date. The idea that someone thousands of years ago watched it unfold and recorded it in a durable clay disc is staggering. It's not just an artifact, it's ancient data, a scientific observation carved into the bones of civilization before telescopes even existed. What do you think about it? Let us know. Number 12. The ancient cannabis vessels. In 2015, archaeologists working in southern Russia unearthed two solid gold vessels that changed what we thought we knew about ancient rituals. Inside, both were a thick black residue, later confirmed through lab tests to contain traces of cannabis and opium. These weren't ornamental or ceremonial trinkets, they were used, and they were used often, believed to belong to a tribal chief from the Scythian culture. The vessels date back around 2,400 years. Historical records from the Greek historian Herodotus had described Scythians using psychoactive plants before battle, and now we have the physical proof to back those words. The theory is that warriors used the smoke to prepare mentally and spiritually before heading into combat, calling on the heavens in a trance-like state. These weren't casual users, they were engaging in a deep ritual. The vessels themselves, beautifully crafted and unmistakably elite, only reinforced the significance. This wasn't just getting high, it was a practice rooted in power, war, and ancient belief. Number 11. The Nautilus Shell Cup. At first peek, this ornate cup looks like a treasure from the sea. And in a way, it is made in Utrecht, Netherlands around 1600. The cup's core is a polished nautilus shell imported from the Indian Ocean. It was then mounted with intricate goldwork and given a stem, transforming it into a luxury showpiece. Once owned by Albrecht V, Duke of Bavaria, the cup was part of his personal cabinet of curiosities, collections meant to dazzle guests with rare and exotic objects. The Duke was known for spending extravagantly on his treasures, boasting that he shelled out the equivalent of 1,000 soldiers' wages every year on acquisitions like this. The maker's mark under the rim remains unreadable, but the craftsmanship speaks clearly. This wasn't just art, it was a statement. Over the centuries, the cup passed through several hands before finding a permanent home in the Met Museum, donated by J.P. Morgan in 1917. What began as ocean life ended up as a symbol of wealth, power, and global trade. Number 10. Medieval Wall Paintings. In late 2021, a team of restorers walked into Calverley Old Hall in Yorkshire expecting a routine job. The medieval manor had been through centuries of wear, and all they had planned was some much-needed upkeep. But while stripping away a layer of 19th century plaster from a small upstairs bedroom, something unexpected came to light: massive Tudor-era wall paintings, hidden and forgotten for generations. The artwork stretches from floor to ceiling, featuring mythical creatures and swirling red vines. Experts believe they were painted during Queen Elizabeth I's reign in the 1500s, possibly inspired by the lavish golden house of Emperor Nero in Rome. Covering them with plaster might seem like vandalism, but behind the panels was a studded wall suggesting the intent was to protect, not erase. Restoration is now underway to bring the vibrant imagery back to life. What was once just another room in a crumbling hall has become a window into England's artistic past, and it almost stayed buried behind plaster forever. Number 9. Templo Mayor sits wooden offerings. In the center of modern Mexico City, beneath the rush of daily life, lies what once was sacred ground. Templo Mayor, the ceremonial core of Tenochtitlan, has long fed archaeologists with fragments of Aztec belief. But in 2022, it offered something unexpected: over 2,500 wooden artifacts, figurines, scepters, masks, and headpieces, all carved and shaped centuries ago, were buried not randomly but deliberately. These weren't lost. They were offerings likely laid by priests during rituals in the 14th century. It's rare for wooden objects to survive, but the soil's humidity and oxygen-poor layers sealed them like time capsules. They speak without words. Every piece tells of devotion, sacrifice, and a belief system that tied nature, gods, and human action together. What's astounding isn't just how many survived, but how their message still lingers. The wood may be old, but the reverence is still alive. Alright guys, now let's talk about Number 8. The carved bird linked to Anne Boleyn. Also found in England in November 2021, this carved oak bird almost slipped through history unnoticed. Antique dealer Paul Fitzsimmons bought it at auction for just £75. At first glance, it was listed as nothing more than an old wooden bird carving. But once in his hands, Paul spotted something everyone else missed: Anne Boleyn's royal heraldic emblem carved subtly into the wood. That changed everything. He now believes the piece once belonged to Boleyn herself, the ill-fated second wife of King Henry VIII and mother to Queen Elizabeth I. Historians suspect it was rescued from her chambers before her execution, surviving the destruction ordered by the king. Most of her personal possessions were lost, making this a potential rarity with a value close to £200,000. Though the carving style isn't realistic enough to confirm the bird's species, it may be a falcon, Anne's personal symbol. Despite its worth, Paul has offered to donate the piece to Hampton Court Palace, keeping history where it belongs. Number 7. The Pompeii Lakshmi figurine. In the ruins of Pompeii, buried by ash in 79 CE, archaeologists unearthed something that didn't belong, an intricately carved figurine of an Indian goddess. Found in 1938 by Italian scholar Amedeo Maiuri, the object depicts a Yakshi, a female spirit associated with fertility in Indian mythology. Mistakenly labeled the Pompeii Lakshmi, the figure was believed at first to represent Lakshmi, the goddess of purity and prosperity, but later analysis suggests otherwise. Still, its presence in an ancient Roman city is extraordinary. It likely arrived as part of trade between Rome and India, hinting at a far more connected world than many assume. The artifact appears to have been part of a larger item, possibly a mirror or shrine. Beyond its aesthetic beauty, it's a marker of global exchange, cultural mixing, and spiritual symbolism. The fact that it sat quietly in Pompeii's ash for nearly 2,000 years only adds to its aura. It's a piece of India frozen in time in the heart of Roman history. Number 6. The Tiny Gold Bible. Before we move on from England, there's one more gem worth mentioning, a Bible smaller than a coin, yet possibly worth 6 figures. Nurse Buffy Bailey and her husband Ian were metal detecting near York in late 2021 when they uncovered a 600-year-old miniature gold Bible. It's barely half an inch long, crafted in 24-karat gold, but the level of detail is staggering. Engravings show Saint Margaret and Saint Leonard, both saints linked to childbirth. That suggests it may have been a good luck charm given to a noble woman during pregnancy. Archaeologists believe it likely belonged to someone in the royal family or high aristocracy. The farmland, which once belonged to King Richard III, makes a royal connection entirely possible. Despite its size, the Bible holds immense historical value, especially since items this delicate rarely survive. Buffy's find is now under expert care, ensuring its story lives on well beyond the field it came from. One small relic, a massive piece of the past. Number 5. The liturgical comb. Currently housed in the Met Museum in New York, this liturgical comb from 11th or 12th century Italy is far from ordinary. Carved for religious use, these double-sided ceremonial combs were tools of ritual, often used by priests before Mass. But this one stands out for its bold imagery. On one side, 2 youths confront each other while riding mythical beasts, likely griffins. The scene feels more Eastern than Christian, echoing motifs popular in Byzantine and Islamic art at the time. Southern Italy during that era sat at a cultural crossroads, and this comb seems to reflect that mix of beliefs and aesthetics. It blurs the rigid lines we often draw between religions. What was once a functional object gradually gained spiritual weight. Liturgical combs like this were eventually seen as sacred, and some even ended up in church treasuries as relics. For an object rooted in ritual, this one carries the visual language of worlds colliding, coexisting, and quietly influencing each other. Number 4. The reassembled Roman vase. In 2020, a remarkable find emerged from an ancient necropolis in Autun, France. Buried at the feet of a 4th century individual was a shattered Roman vase, hundreds of pieces barely recognizable. But those fragments were no ordinary glass. They belonged to a rare Roman reticulated vase, a masterpiece of lattice-like craftsmanship made from delicate glass threads. Only 10 of these vases have ever been found, and this is the only one discovered in France. Over a year, experts painstakingly pieced it back together, restoring its form and revealing a Latin inscription, Vivus Feliciter, live in happiness. That phrase might sound cliché today, but in its time it was a heartfelt farewell. The vase's preservation, beauty, and origin speak volumes about Roman artistry, trade, and burial customs. For something that arrived in shards, it now stands whole, elegant, and haunting. A once-forgotten offering now speaks again, carrying the voice of a Roman farewell across 2,000 years. and it also proves that Romans were not normal. Number 3. The ancient Chinese sword. Unearthed in January 2017 from a tomb in Xinjiang, China, this sword is more than just a relic, it's a survivor. Over 2,300 years old and dating back to the Warring States period, it was found inside a sealed, dry tomb, still sheathed in its original scabbard. When uncovered, the blade hadn't dulled or rusted. It still caught the light with a shine, as if its owner had just set it down. That kind of preservation is rare, even in China, where ancient weaponry is not uncommon. The warrior buried with it likely fought in one of the bloodiest and most transformative eras of Chinese history. While the scabbard has seen better days, it did its job, protecting the blade from the moisture and decay of centuries. After gentle restoration, the sword was placed on display, still gleaming. It now stands not just as a symbol of craftsmanship, but of endurance, a piece of war and legacy, locked in silence until time finally gave it back. Number 2. The Monomachus crown. Gilded in gold and laced with power, the Monomachus crown is anything but subtle. Named after Emperor Constantine IX Monomachus, this ceremonial headpiece from the 11th century stands as a polished reminder of Byzantine opulence. It's not a traditional crown, it's a set of golden plaques adorned with cloisonné, enamel, and gem-inlaid portraits of saints, angels, and the emperor himself. Each panel tells its own story, merging political authority with divine approval. While scholars still debate whether it was worn or purely symbolic, there's no question about its impact. The craftsmanship is meticulous, delicate filigree work, vibrant color palettes, and inscriptions that radiate control and religious sanctity. Today, it sits in Aachen Cathedral's treasury in Germany, far from its imperial origins, yet still holding the same presence. Every facet reflects the empire's intent to rule not just with swords, but with sanctified grandeur. The Monomachus crown doesn't just represent power, it declares it in gold, enamel, and immortal imagery. Number 1. Persian water clocks. Long before ticking hands or winding gears, the Persians were counting time drop by drop. Their water clocks, clepsydras, were simple but nothing short of brilliant. Dating as far back as 500 BCE, these devices used gravity and patience to measure hours with remarkable precision. The method, a small bowl floated in a pot of water, slowly filling until it sank. When it did, time had passed, and a designated keeper would reset it. But this wasn't just a tool, it was a position of power. The timekeeper held status, especially in dry, arid regions where irrigation had to be timed perfectly to avoid disputes. These clocks weren't built to impress, they were built to serve, synchronize prayers, manage agriculture, and keep order. Even centuries later, Rome borrowed the concept, tweaking it with graduated cylinders. Eventually, water clocks gave way to pendulums and mechanics, but their quiet innovation paved the way. They didn't tick, chime, or shine, but they worked flawlessly. And sometimes, that's all the time ever needed. We hope you've enjoyed this video. If you did, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more content like this. Thanks for hanging with us, and we'll see you soon in the next one.